Chapter 33, The Wall. 8 hours after Daniel and Fate fell asleep, it was still very dark in the tunnel, but Daniel could see well enough to notice Fate stir and finally stand. Fate groaned as he stretched. "Daniel," whispered Fate. "Daniel, let's go. The bats will be back soon." Daniel didn't respond, and Fate came closer. "Oh, good. You're awake. Let's go before the bats come home." Daniel wiped his eyes. Fate noticed and knelt in front of him. "What's wrong?" He hesitated, but Fate had a way of pulling the words out of Daniel. "You said something that's been bothering me for a while." "I say a lot of things, Daniel. You'll have to be more specific than that." "You said that our good fortune when we're untwisted takes a toll on those around us. Does it also affect them when we are not fully untwisted?" "I feel you're dancing around something specific," said Fate. "Go ahead, spit it out." Daniel took a deep breath before responding. "Did I kill my parents?" "Oh my God, Daniel, no, I'm sure you didn't." "But you don't know for sure, do you?" argued Daniel. Fate sighed. "There you go, looking for certainty again. There aren't many things you'll ever know with certainty. This I can tell you, though, when I'm mostly untwisted, I can win at cards and others at the table will lose. But it's not deadly for them, that's for sure. Being fully untwisted, that's a different thing altogether. Even then, though, the effect on other people is limited to a few dozen yards, except for the squirrels. I'm assuming you weren't with your parents when they died?" Daniel shook his head. Fate nodded. "Well then, unless your parents were squirrels, I can say with 100% certainty that you were not the cause of. How did they die?" "Car crash," said Daniel, almost too low to hear. Fate nodded. "There's a lot of that these days. It's the newest plague. Don't worry about it, though. There's always a cure around the corner." He paused a few seconds and patted Daniel's shoulder. "All better now?" Yeah, I'm okay." He cleared his throat, anxious to change the subject. "What time do you think it is?" "Feels like 5, said Fate, as he helped Daniel to his feet. "Feels like?" asked Daniel, wondering how anyone could tell the time without a clock. "I'm old," explained Fate. "The older you get, the earlier you rise. It's like a force of nature." They cautiously crept forward toward the rubble pile, keeping a watchful eye for any remaining snakes. There were so many gaps and crevices between the broken stones that a rattlesnake could be hidden anywhere in the pile without being seen. Fate waited for Daniel to securely fasten his spear to the backpack with one of the Velcro straps before he tested the steadiness of the first stone. "Now might be a good time to pray, Daniel," said Fate seriously. Daniel was concentrating on following Fate, placing his feet where Fate did, and was too worried about the snakes to reply. The mound of broken stones was anything but stable, and climbing it took a great deal of trial and error. "What's the matter? Are you not a religious man, Daniel?" said Fate with a touch of humor. "So far, my experiments with religion have failed to produce repeatable results," said Daniel, concentrating on the gaps between the stones. Fate laughed and stepped cautiously to the next rock. "I don't think that's how it works, Daniel." "I'm pretty sure that's how everything works," said Daniel with confidence. And he was confident, but the events of the last 2 days made him add, "Isn't it?" "Well," Fate grunted as he took another step up, "I'm not saying I believe it either, Daniel, but I do feel the seductive power of the narrative." Daniel saw a movement near Fate's ankle. Before the sound of the rattle had time to register in their ears, Daniel had reached up, grasped the spear, and pulled it down. It pivoted on the Velcro strap and came down like a guillotine. The knife tip struck just behind the snake's head. The rattle sound stopped, and the lifeless remnants of the snake squirmed back between the stones. Daniel looked up at Fate and expected to see shock or fear, but Fate only smiled down at him. "That was very lucky for me that you were there, wouldn't you say, Daniel?" Daniel thought about it for a moment. He was still struggling with the idea that luck wasn't the nonsense he had been sure it was only the day before. Yes, agreed Daniel finally. Yes, I guess it was. There you go now, said Fate cheerfully and tested another flat stone. No, Daniel, the thing about religion is it's a comfort blanket. It makes people happy, or at least contented. But it's full of contradictions, complained Daniel, and how do you know which version of it is better than the others? Fate chuckled. That's easy, Daniel. The right church is the one your friends go to. He stumbled and flailed his arms wildly before getting control of his balance. Fate took a breath before continuing. I tried it for a while. It was quite enjoyable. All you have to do is put reason in a box and take it back out when you get home from church. Simple. It's all about compartmentalizing. There's a pearl for you. What made you stop? Fate paused his climbing, and his expression darkened. He sighed. The reason I started going was a wedding. My religious period died with a funeral. Never fall in love, Daniel. There's another pearl for you, said Fate, with no enthusiasm. At the highest point, Fate tested the strength of one of the thick vines dangling down from the hole above and helped Daniel up to it. Daniel climbed the vine with ease, using only his arms. He turned back to help Fate, who was struggling to get the smooth soles of his expensive shoes to grip the vine. Fate gave up and bent at the waist, breathing heavily from the effort. 1 second. I just need to catch my breath. He still had one hand on the vine to steady himself on the teetering rock. The vine jerked upward, nearly dislocating Fate's shoulder. He quickly grasped the vine with his other hand and rode it up. As he crested the edge of the crater, he saw the mandrills. The troop of 4 males pulling the vine stopped when he reached the top. Fate stood still-winded and examined the ruins of his formerly white suit. Well, that was lucky you people were here to help. Wouldn't you say, Daniel? Lucky? Daniel bit into an apple and tossed one to Fate, who accepted it eagerly. The mandrills seemed to be waiting for something. Fate took a moment to get oriented. The path leading away from the cave-in both directions was clear of any trees. The reason was obvious. There was little or no soil above the stones that formed the tunnel's roof. It was just like the road they encountered shortly after leaving the cutter. The sky that had been growing steadily brighter now darkened as the bats returned. "This way!" shouted Fate. He jogged away from the hole in the same direction they had been going while inside the tunnel. Daniel and the 4 mandrills followed. "Why this direction?" demanded Daniel. "Because the bear is back that way," said Fate. He stuck out a thumb over his shoulder. "So is the cutter," suggested Daniel with uncertainty. "No, it isn't. It's that way, more or less." He gestured to his left into the jungle. "I have it all figured out. The road we found was actually the roof of another tunnel, and the tunnel we chose, you chose, went off at a 60-degree angle. The one you didn't choose led back in the direction we came, back to the cutter. So all we have to do is get to the next vertex of the triangle, probably another library, take the next tunnel, and we'll get to the last point of the triangle. The cutter must be close to that. Simple." "What makes you think it's a triangle?" "The angle was 60 degrees. I remember Euclid." Fate tapped his temple and grinned, clearly proud of his logic. Daniel grunted. "So now you're 23 centuries old?" "I remember my Euclid, Daniel. I paid some attention in school. I didn't know the man himself. What do you think of my theory?" He trailed off and shaded his eyes from the sun, attempting to see the path ahead more clearly. "Is that a wall across the road?" Something was blocking the way, and this time it wasn't a fallen tree. The mandrills noticed it too and ran toward it, whooping excitedly. Daniel and Fate picked up their pace as well, but cautiously stayed back from their companions. As they got closer, they could see the wall blocking their path had a glistening pattern of black ovals against an olive-green background. It also bulged toward them from the top and then back away from them near the ground. It was over 8 feet tall and too smooth to climb. Daniel and Fate approached it and saw that it stretched deep into the forest in both directions. The mandrills were already climbing a nearby tree. The first one jumped onto the top of the wall and waited for the others. "I guess we go over," said Fate flatly. He helped Daniel reach the lowest branch of the tree beside the wall. Once on the first branch, he climbed the next 3 and leapt over to the top of the wall. Fate followed and nearly slipped off the smoothly curved surface. "This is the oddest wall I've ever seen," said Fate, with an expression of confusion. He gestured to the mandrills. "And why aren't they climbing down the other side?" The mandrills were waiting for Fate to reach the top of the wall, which wasn't actually a wall. It was a giant snake, so large that this section of its body looked like a bulging wall. The mandrills whooped and slapped the flat sides of their spears against the snake's back. It jerked ahead. They shouted louder and began jumping. Daniel and Fate both lost their balance. Each fell off on opposite sides of the snake as it picked up speed and slithered away, carrying the ecstatic mandrills with it. The wall sloped dramatically toward the snake's tail, which twitched in irritation as it disappeared into the jungle, leaving Daniel and Fate staring in bewilderment. "Let's not tell anyone that just happened, shall we?" whispered Fate. "No one would believe it." Daniel was scribbling furiously in his orange notebook. He looked up at Fate. "What do you think it eats?" Fate gave each direction of the road a glance and nodded seriously. "Let's keep moving."